5 in a row for Duke women's basketball, and they're up to the number 10 ranking. Crazy good stuff for the Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks so much for being here with us today on Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. We've got a bonus episode of Locked On Blue Devils devoted to what's going on in the world of Duke women's basketball with radio play-by-play voice Chris Edwards. Duke has won 5 in a row, and you know we got to talk about the great play of Karen Lawson's squad as of late. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Really good stuff coming out in the next few days and weeks ahead of this weekend's game for the men's basketball team against the North Carolina Tar Heels, and then women's basketball with a massive contest coming up on Monday when they take on NC State. All that and more coming up in today's conversation as Chris Edwards is here with us on the program today. Good to see you once again, Chris, and what a fun one you got to experience there over the weekend as Duke picks up a really impressive road win over Georgia Tech.
JJ, good to be with you as always. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, Blue Devils playing really well. Kind of a grinded out game on Sunday at Georgia Tech, 55-50. Blue Devils get it done kind of back and forth there in the first half. Duke had the lead at the break. Georgia Tech comes back, takes the lead, and then down the stretch, Blue Devils made some winning plays, particularly on the defensive end. Maybe it was not the prettiest game to watch from an offensive standpoint, but Duke's been playing some pretty high-level defense here. Held Georgia Tech to one of their last 17 from the field for the game. Georgia Tech didn't score for the last 5.5 minutes. I mean, anytime you only give up, 2 points in a quarter, probably going to win the game. And that's been the key for Coach Lawson's team, I think, over the last 5 or 6 games.
What does it say, man? We always get hyped up about these big games. And here it is, a Sunday contest, afternoon tip, and it's a top 20 matchup between Duke and Georgia Tech. And both of these teams throughout the course of the season, they can score the basketball. And then all of a sudden you get in these big time environments and these big games, you could feel the magnitude of what a win like this would do for your team and your morale. And the next thing you know, there were stretches where it felt like neither team could score the basketball.
Sure, but I think that's the byproduct of the ACC, right? I mean, you've got really good teams up and down the league. And I also think that these teams know each other so well. You know the scheme so well. You see these teams year in and year out. In some cases, in Duke's case, with teams like North Carolina, NC State, Virginia Tech in previous years, saw those teams twice a year. So you know what the other team wants to run. And it's easy to scout, right? Because you've got all this film available now. I think Sunday was our 21st or something game of the year. So you got 21 games of film to look at to see what these teams are going to be like. So it's easier to scout. But, you know, to that point, coaches can draw up the best scouting report ever. Coaches can draw up a great play coming out of the timeout. Players still have to execute, right? And I thought the Blue Devils did that at a really high level on the defensive end on Sunday, made some stops. Listen, Georgia Tech is a phenomenal team. Ton of respect for what Nell Fortner has done over there, building that program. They're going to be an NCAA tournament team, and they could make a deep run into the NCAA tournament. They've got scoring. They've got Zoe Smith, who's a talented post player who had a double-double. Her best game in a Georgia Tech uniform. She's a transfer from Georgia. Danny Carnegie is just a phenomenal freshman, one of the best scorers in the ACC. Duke held her to, I think, 1 of 9 shooting on Sunday. Kara Dunn just scored her 1,000th point recently. She's averaging almost 17 a game. So they've got scores at Georgia Tech. I think that tells you how good this Duke defense has been. Blue Devils are top 5 in the ACC in most every defensive category. And that, as you know, JJ, has been a hallmark of Coach Lawson's team during her time at Duke, is playing really good, solid man-to-man defense. And the Blue Devils are starting to round into shape a little bit. I think it took a little bit longer this year because of what Duke lost last year. And you say, well, Chris, they just lost Kennedy Brown and Camilla Emsbo, and they didn't score a whole lot. And you're right. They didn't average 12, 14 points a game. But what they did, and particularly with Kennedy, I think I've told you this before, is she was so good at being the quarterback of the defense from the post. And she was calling coverages and talking about those things. The Blue Devils had to learn that. I mean, they had that talented group of freshmen last year that played so much, but it's one thing to play and learn, and it's another thing to play and lead. And I think this group is now started to embrace that role. They've started to figure it out. And boy, have they playing at a really high level at all spots, all 5 spots on the floor.
Yeah, which is really good to see over the course of this 5-game winning streak. It's been different players contributing offensively on the floor. And you look at a game like this where Duke scores 55 points in their win over Georgia Tech, 3 players in double figures, all of them ending up with 12 points on the day.
Yeah, and I thought Oluchi Okananwa in particular was really big for the Blue Devils. They're in the fourth quarter, kind of back and forth, one possession game for much of the fourth quarter. Then Oluchi took over and scored 6 straight points, basket, and coupled that with 3 straight stops for the Blue Devils. A 1 or 2 point game turned into a 6 or 8 point game, right? And so that was huge. I thought her play, particularly down the stretch in the fourth quarter, was phenomenal and really keyed Duke to winning. But you can't forget about Delaney Thomas. She scored 12 points too. And I thought, particularly on the glass, I think she had 8 rebounds in that game, and 5 or 6 of those rebounds were offensive rebounds. So huge for Duke to be able to get those extra possessions and grind out some more clock. And listen, the more time you got the ball, right, the less time you got to play defense, less time the other team's got to go down there and try to score. So I thought that was kind of the undersung moments, or the 2 undersung moments of the game on Sunday.
So 5 wins in a row for Duke women's basketball, and now they're got the full week off to kind of get ready for this game coming up on Monday against NC State. Really tough test coming up for the Blue Devils. We'll take a moment to preview that game and a little bit more after we take this time out here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And of course, we're getting you ready for Super Bowl 59. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. Chiefs, Eagles, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. So much to be on the lookout for, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you could place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59, proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Talking Duke women's basketball with the voice of the Duke Blue Devils from the women's basketball team. It's Chris Edwards, as Duke now has a full week off before the NC State game coming up on Monday. We just saw this from the men's team as they had a Saturday to Saturday break before they were in action. Always good to have your bye kind of built in within the ACC schedule, but then you start to wonder, are we going to come out rusty and not knocking down shots and that sort of thing? What is this week going to mean for this Duke team without a game, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's a good time, JJ. Well, I think it's a really good time for this team to get a break. They went 7-1 in the month of January. It had a lot of travel. I think about this week going to Dallas, right? You go play a Thursday game in Dallas, fly home after the game. You get home early Friday morning, turn around, leave again Saturday, go to Atlanta. I get that it's only an hour or so flight, but still back-to-back road games. And now you get a chance to rest, to recover. As you know, being around teams, look, we're into the early part of February basically now, and everybody's got bumps and bruises. Everybody's nicked up. I think it's a chance for the Blue Devils to recover, to rest, to continue to work on themselves and get ready for the stretch run of the season. Because the reality is, Duke's got some tough games coming up down the stretch. They've got NC State on Monday. They've also got to play a Clemson team that's a lot better than they have been in the past, maybe better than the record would indicate. You still got to go on the road to Notre Dame. You still got to go to Wake Forest. You've got to play North Carolina one more time. There are still a lot of really challenging games. Didn't even mention Florida State, who Duke closes the season with. So get a chance to get yourself healthy, get yourself ready to go for the stretch run. This is a team that I feel like probably could host in the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament. A lot of quad 1, quad 2 opportunities still out there for the Blue Devils. The net ranking is pretty high right now. I think number 8 last time I looked, number 1 strength of schedule. So everything the Blue Devils want to do is in front of them, but it comes down to starting on Monday against NC State. If you want to win the ACC, you got to beat the teams in front of you, and the Blue Devils have a great chance Monday night. But I think a good chance for all of us to catch our breath and get ready for the final stretch run, hopefully a run that takes us to the early part of April.
Well, look, man, I'm just tired hearing all the travel that the team's been through.
At least we're not going to California this year, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, the
Next year.
cross-country flight. We'll wait a year for that one from the women's team. So now you've got NC State on Monday. Talk about travel. Real quick trip over to Raleigh for this game to play out. We've seen so many really amazing Duke and NC State games over the years. And what do you know? Both these teams, once again, both inside the top 20.
Don't think anybody's surprised about that, right? And I don't think anybody's surprised that NC State's been really good inside Reynolds Coliseum. They're unbeaten at home this year. Blue Devils, believe it or not, are tied for the most ACC road wins of anybody in the league with Notre Dame. I think North Carolina is up there as well. But the Blue Devils have played pretty well, knock on wood, on the road in the ACC. And yeah, to your point, easy trip over to Raleigh, right? About half an hour or so versus an hour flight to Atlanta or a 2.5-hour flight to Dallas. And listen, NC State, they're your typical NC State team. Maybe they don't have the solid post that we're used to seeing, like an Elisa Cunane from a few years ago, or even River Baldwin the last couple of years. But, you know, they've got some solid players, Isaiah James, Sanaya Rivers, Zoe Brooks. The list goes on and on. Fundamentally sound and not going to beat themselves. It's a typical Westmore team, plays really good defense, only giving up like 55 or 60 points per game, scored about 78 or so per contest. So the Blue Devils are going to have to play really good defense again, JJ. I think that's what it comes down to. Play good defense and make some shots. You know, I don't think you're going to be able to score 55 points on Monday and win the game. Probably have to score in the 60s or the 70s. But hey, listen, if you're holding teams to 50 points a game, then maybe you will be able to score 55 and win. You know, that's the great thing about this Duke defense, right? Like, even if you're having a bad night offensively, like the Blue Devils did on Sunday, like they did at North Carolina earlier this year, right? Defense travels. You can always keep that defense with you. Defense has traveled for the Blue Devils, and that's what's kept them in a lot of games over this last 5 or 6 games.
Okay, Georgia Tech, we talked Delaney Thomas. We talked about what Oluchi Okananwa was able to do for the Blue Devils. Who's kind of that player to watch? If you're NC State, or just the vibe that you've gotten over the last few weeks, is there a player that's on the verge of clicking that could be due for a big game like this? Who should we be on the lookout for?
I always think that you got to watch out for like Reagan Richardson and Ashlyn Jackson. I think they can go off at any time, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe the bye week helps Reagan a little bit, kind of get back going a little with her game, with her shot.
Yeah.
You got to watch out for Toby Fournier too, right? Toby's had 5 games of 20 or more points, won ACC Rookie of the Week again this week. I mean, probably going to be either her or Carnegie for ACC Freshman of the Year. And listen, NC State's got some size. I don't think they've got the size that they've seen with Toby. So perhaps she has a big game on Monday night. It could be Okananwa, it could be Delaney, it could be Jaden Donovan. I mean, Duke's had, I think, 8 or 9 different people lead them in scoring this year. So you stop one person, great. You still got to figure out the other 8 or 9 that are going to play in the game and try to slow them down, because, with Coach Lawson, it's not a superstar thing, right? It's a team thing. And then that's the way the Blue Devils have approached it. It's a team basketball first mentality, and that's worked for Duke, and hopefully we can keep it going coming up on Monday night.
So it's Monday, February 3rd. We'll see Duke at NC State. That Thursday, they've got the game against Clemson at home, and then Super Bowl Sunday, prior to the game kicking off, you've got Duke and Miami there inside Cameron Indoor. So fun stretch of games coming up here for Duke women's basketball, Chris. Before we end today's show, though, obviously this weekend, really fun game coming to Cameron Indoor. On the men's side of things, I'd be remiss if I didn't get your thoughts a little bit about Duke, 10-0 for the first time in league play since 2007-2008. They've got a 14-game winning streak, the longest in the nation. John Shire swept the Tar Heels in year 1. Duke was swept by UNC last year. Here we go, the first installment. And everybody, when you look at the sports books and you look at the analytics, feels like this is bound to be a Duke win. But as we know, it just never plays out that easy, man. We're a big fight.
Duke and Carolina always delivers, right? Every year, it's a close down to the wire game, and I expect that again. Like, listen, you can say Carolina's down, whatever. It's Duke and Carolina, and I know it sounds cliche, and you can throw the records out the window, and yeah, that's true. But from a Blue Devil standpoint, I mean, think about the last week or so. Had that week off, as you mentioned, before they played Wake Forest, and a really quick turnaround, an emotional game in Winston-Salem last Saturday. Had to hold on to the lead as Wake made that second half charge. Blue Devils do that. And then a quick turnaround to play NC State. You play in Winston on Saturday night. You have just Sunday to get ready for an NC State team that, despite their record, JJ, went to the Final Four.
Ended your season the year prior.
Sure. So listen, it's the ACC, and you can talk about the ACC being down all you want to, and I don't necessarily buy into all that, right? Like the ACC is always going to be the ACC, and on Tobacco Road, when Duke and Carolina or Duke and State or Duke and Wake play, it's always a tight ball game. But, the Blue Devils are playing at an unbelievable level right now. I think clearly the best team in the league, and I expect Duke to win, but I don't know that it's going to be a game that everybody wants to think like we all do, like it's going to be a blowout, right? It's going to be a typical Duke-Carolina back-and-forth game, but confident in Coach Shire and what the Blue Devils are going to be able to do coming up on Saturday night.
I'm just excited. All the greats that have played for Duke have their moments, and you instantly think about them and the plays that they're making against UNC. And how can you not be excited about what we've seen? Cooper Flagg continuing to get better game after game. Everybody in America wants to watch this guy play, and rightfully so. And now he, the big Duke guy that he is, loving wearing those 4 letters across his chest, gets to represent the school in the North Carolina game inside Cameron Indoor coming up. Like, I'm just excited to see what his game looks like and how he delivers.
Yeah, I think we all are. I mean, it's just something new every single night, right? I mean, Cooper's going to deliver, but you got a lot of other guys on the team that's been delivering at a pretty high level this year too. So it's not just the Cooper Flagg show. It's a team first approach for Coach Shire as well.
Excited to see it play out on Saturday, and certainly excited for women's basketball to get back in action coming up on Monday. Chris, how can people be involved? How can they listen to these broadcasts?
Yeah, thanks for asking, JJ. Easiest way is the Varsity Network app. It's a free download. Just download the app, search for Duke, add it to your favorites, and we'll be there for every single game for the rest of the way.
Good to see you, Chris. We'll do it again soon, okay?
Looking forward to it, JJ. Thanks.
All right, that's Chris Edwards joining us here on Locked On Blue Devils today. Appreciate his time and insight. Looking forward to the next few games for women's basketball, and, of course, really excited for that UNC game for the men's team coming up on Saturday. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.